Mobile phones. They're small, they're loud, and they've taken over. A statement that epitomises today's digital culture. I was sat in a cafe recently trying to chat to my girlfriend, as three other girls sat playing each other videos loudly on their phones. This is a common occurrence, and it really annoys me. There's nothing more irritating than trying to hear the person you're speaking to as they're drowned out by somebody else on the phone, but it's really nothing new. The statement I opened this video with was actually said by somebody, I forget who, in a story I've remembered from 1999. As the ranks of mobile users continued to swell by the millions in the late 1990s, so too did the complaints against their shrill intrusion, something that's kind of hard to believe today in the true age of the mobile phone. Signs put up against their unwelcome operation, once confined to places where they were a danger, were becoming increasingly common in all kinds of public areas. People didn't know how to deal with the daily displays of bad telephone manners, particularly in their trains, pubs and restaurants. The French House pub, if I remember rightly, in London's Soho district, warned patrons, quote, "In the interests of serious drinking and good conversation, please refrain from using cellular telephones," and offenders were shown to the door. Punishments for mobile phone intrusions could be even more dramatic. Irish journalist John Kiltrain was sent to ponder his transgression in the cells when his mobile phone went off in a Dublin Central courtroom in 1998. Such was the backlash in some countries that jamming mobile signals was seen as a fitting countermeasure to the problem. Younger Japanese people, for example, thought nothing of taking phone calls at the cinema, and irate filmgoers had little defence against them doing so until 1999. Bowing under colossal public pressure, the Japanese government legalised the use of phone jammers. In Tokyo, many upmarket restaurants banned calls at the table. Film theatres warned audiences to switch off mobile phones, and recorded messages on trains asked passengers not to use them at their seats. The rest of the developed world looked set to follow the same trend, but jamming would bring its own problems. At the opera, for example, if there was a doctor in the audience, he'd hand in his mobile phone and tell an usher where he was sitting in the audience in case of an emergency. So it wouldn't be a good thing if there was a jammer which would prevent him from getting on with his job. On the other end of the spectrum, the malicious use of jammers could threaten the integrity of the phone system, not to mention the concern over the potential for interference with other electronic devices such as pacemakers was rife in those days. With the appropriate equipment in operation, mobile telephones would be rendered useless as their signals were blocked, making both incoming and outgoing calls impossible. Fears over safety really stopped other countries following Japan's example. There were 13 million mobile phone subscribers by the end of the 1990s. It was looking unlikely that jammers would ever be legalised. Their use would be an infringement of the network's licensing agreement with the Radio Communications Agency. They'd also be a serious infringement of free speech and communication, not to mention the danger to the effectiveness of GSM security systems in buildings. This didn't stop them, however, especially the cruder models that appeared on the black market in the UK. Many were handheld and designed to be pointed at the desired area while pressing a button to stop all mobile phone signals. Medic, one of the first companies to market small-range jammers for private use, sold about 6,000 of its WaveWall devices since their debut in 1998. The standard version, which had a 20-foot jamming radius and was illegally available in the UK and Ireland, sold for $480. This model was called the WaveWall Hyper 30, but I can't find any information relating to it except this one photo from July 1998. Despite the clear stance from the Radio Communications Agency, later Ofcom, an interesting story began to emerge in the summer of 2000 when Big Brother threatened to deploy a phone jammer in the Big Brother house. Do you remember Nicholas Bateman or Nasty Nick? Well, he was accused of smuggling a tiny mobile phone into the camera-filled isolated house. All 10 original housemates were rigorously searched to ensure they had no means of contacting friends who could inform them how they were perceived by the show's millions of viewers. However, it was suggested that Bateman may have sneaked in a tiny mobile phone at the start of the show's proceedings. Bateman allegedly switched on the phone kept inside his wash bag to vibrate alert at 4 AM each day while lying beneath his bed covers. When it went off, he then listened intently to the latest Big Brother news reports without speaking. Upon searching the house, the show's producers decided to install a phone jammer. Recognising a demand for jammers and their potential for widespread use, the UK government was keen to crack down on anybody selling them. Some more professional-looking devices were produced abroad and imported. A businessman who sold jamming devices was fined in 2002. I won't name him, but he appeared before Northampton magistrates in the October and admitted supplying the equipment. He was fined £600 with costs of £1,350 after pleading guilty and was ordered to forfeit goods seized by the Radio Communications Agency to the value of £1,050. The business was called Gadgets and Gizmos and was raided after extensive investigations by officers from the Radio Communications Agency. Of course, it was one rule for one and one rule for another. Rumours began circulating in the mid-1990s that Princess Diana had a jammer installed at Kensington Palace to stop eavesdroppers listening into her phone calls on the back of the Squidgygate incident, in which Cyril Reenan tape-recorded her phone calls with James Gilbey. Video link in the description. After the recording of her squidgy conversations with James Gilbey, Princess Diana reportedly acquired a special mobile dedicated to rugby player Will Carling's number. Rumours persisted that a network dead zone on Kensington Church Street was due to a jamming device installed by Diana in Kensington Palace. Will Carling and Princess Diana were romantically linked by the press, but Carling has always maintained they were only friends. The owner of a spy shop who supplied equipment to the police and the Ministry of Defence was prosecuted in 2003 for selling illegal phone jammers. K9 Electronics of Northampton sold gadgets that could cut off all mobile phone conversations in a building with the touch of a button. They imported between 20 and 29 of the devices, which cost £149.50 from Taiwan, and had sold 11 before being raided by investigators from the Department of Trade and Industry. Now, I have to point out that the owner was told and assured that they were legal, and the judge, very rightly, recognised a great deal of legitimacy about the business, but he slapped the owner with a year's conditional discharge and a fine of £5,200. Despite most countries making their laws clear and tough penalties for suppliers of jammers, they gained widespread use, with the majority being used illegally. One Dublin cinema installed a phone jammer in 2003, and Comreg, Ireland's version of Ofcom, very quickly warned them to stop using it, threatening a €25,000 fine and 12 months in prison. The jammer was used in the Savoy cinema after the operations manager, growing tired of fighting and arguments due to mobile phone use, purchased it from the US. This particular model was called the Mobile Blocker. The cinema chain hit out at Comreg, claiming their stance was unfair, but to no avail. Not all countries were quite as strict. One pastor at the Church of the Defenceless in Morella in Spain introduced a jammer in 2002 to keep his flock in tune with God after becoming sick of them using phones during his services. As far as I know, no action was ever taken against him. A jammer was installed in the Israeli parliament in 1999 to stop the constant ringing of mobile phones during proceedings. The French government's industry minister actually approved plans to allow cinemas, concert halls and theatres to use jammers in 2004 on the condition that emergency calls were allowed to get through. I wasn't sure how this would work until I stumbled across phone-proof paint. Things got a bit more high-tech in 2006 when US-based company Natural Nano released details of an innovative technology which it claimed could be the solution to the problem of how to block phone signals in performance venues. The system used a special paint that incorporated nanomaterials, small naturally occurring particles, to block out phone signals. The effect would be similar to if a theatre was underground and out of signal range. However, what appeared to make the technology viable was that its inventors claimed it could be used to selectively filter phone signals into an auditorium so that emergency signals or internal communication devices could continue to be used. An accompanying piece of kit provided an antenna inside the theatre that picked up phone signals and could send them to an antenna outside the auditorium, allowing specific frequencies access to the building. Ofcom said that because the paint would be passively blocking signals rather than actively jamming them, the technology wouldn't contravene current legislation. However, it warned that the antenna system to allow emergency signals access to the building could prove difficult to license. I can't find any evidence for this gaining any traction, however. Other space-age concepts were conceived in this era too. In 2002, special wood packed with tiny magnetic particles was hailed as the answer to the prayers of every theatre owner and restaurateur looking to banish the menace of mobile phones. Japanese researchers developed the magnetic wood to block microwave radiation, rendering mobiles useless. Researchers thought of sandwiching fine particles of magnetic nickel zinc ferrite between sheets of wood after various attempts to make wood impervious to the radiation. Tests showed that a 4mm thick section of the special boarding could cut the power of a signal wave by 97%. There was, however, a less aggressive and more down-to-earth option open to those hoping to preempt mobile phone pollution or dangerous interference. American electronics company Zetron was marketing its Cell Phone Detector Plus alarm system during the late 1990s for detecting mobiles in the UK and Ireland. About the size of a burglar alarm, the device was aimed at places where interference from active mobiles could cause hazardous malfunctions, such as hospitals. Imagine not being able to use your mobile phone in the hospital today. Upon detecting mobile phone or two-way radio transmissions, the detector flashed bright lights and sounded an alarm followed by a voice message requesting the user to turn their mobile off immediately. So that's some thoughts, tales and recollections from the growth of the mobile phone and the intrusion it imposed. I often breathe a sigh of relief when I go to my local supermarket, for example, and its metal roof renders my mobile phone useless. I'd love to go a day without the now natural urge to check my phone or doom scroll. Would it be a welcome step to see wide-scale phone jamming in certain places? Would it make us more civilized? Would it force us to communicate in the way we once did? Or would it be an infringement on our basic human rights, free speech and communication? I fall somewhere down the middle. Who would be forcing you to go into a venue with no phone signal? You could just go somewhere where there was. I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below.